Now, first of all, we need to talk about a variant reading. The difference is that the New King James Version says that the nations were divided according to the number of the children of Israel. ESV says that God divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God. So did God divide the nations according to the number of the children of Israel? Or did he divide the nations according to the number of the sons of God? Do you see the difference now? Do you guys see the difference? Why the difference? Why the difference? Here's the reason why. The later Hebrew manuscripts of the Old Testament that were produced by a group of Jewish scribes called the Masoretes, centuries after the time of the Lord, let's say from the 5th century onwards, those manuscripts, known as the Masoretic textual tradition, Masoretic text type, read sons of Israel, that the nations were divided according to sons of Israel. However, the Greek version of the Old Testament, which is based on an older form of the Hebrew text, and the Dead Sea Scrolls that were discovered in 1947, they found a copy of Deuteronomy 32, and in the Hebrew of Deuteronomy 32 of the Dead Sea Scrolls, a copy that predates Christ by about 200 years, this is furnished the oldest copies of the Hebrew Old Testament to date. Deuteronomy 32 in the Dead Sea Scrolls reads sons of God in agreement with the Greek version called the Septuagint, disagreeing with the later Masoretic textual tradition. So the two oldest traditions, the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Greek version of the Old Testament based on an older form of the Hebrew Old Testament called the Septuagint, read sons of God. You understand? Even the Dead Sea Scrolls. In fact, if you have an NIV Bible, there's a note in the NIV Bible saying that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right, and in the Septuagint, the Greek version, it reads sons of God. Here, for example, let me give you the link. Even your note to the ESV, watch here. Compare Dead Sea Scrolls Septuagint. Masoretic text, sons of Israel. So it's telling you in the footnote that the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, reads sons of God. It's the Masoretic text, the Masoretic textual tradition, right? The later Hebrew manuscripts produced after the time of Christ, centuries later, that read sons of Israel. Do you see it? Now let me give you the footnote for the NIV. In footnote A, this is what you're going to read. Don't take my word for it, click on it. It says Masoretic text. It's saying that we're basing our translation on the Masoretic text, so we went with sons of Israel. But then it notes, Dead Sea Scrolls, see all Septuagint, sons of God. So the NIV is telling you that the Dead Sea Scrolls, which furnishes the oldest copy of Deuteronomy to date, and the Greek version both agree that here it said sons of God. Now, why the difference? Well, contextually, did Moses say by inspiration of the Holy Spirit that when God divided the nations, he did so in view of Israel? That God foresaw the formation of his people, and that he was going to choose a nation from the line of Abraham, and then situate them in the land of Canaan, so that he divided the nations and prepared the conditions for the time in which Israel would come into being. Is that what Moses is saying? Or is Moses saying that God divided the nations according to the number of the sons of God, irrespective of Israel's coming into existence? So did God divide the nations according to how many sons of God there were? Or did he divide the nations in anticipation of the coming of Israel? Which one? If you read Genesis 10 carefully, this is what I want you to know. Read Genesis 10 carefully and count the number of nations. You know what the total of the number of the nations are? 70. 70. Very significant and important. Why is that important? Well, archaeologists discovered tablets at a place called Ibla and Ugarit. Tablets help to illuminate the customs, the laws mentioned in the Old Testament. So now we have a better understanding of these Old Testament customs and laws. Well, one thing that these scholars and archaeologists discovered is that The pagans, the ancient Near Eastern peoples, believed in a heavenly council, a council of divine beings that presided over the affairs of the world. The divine council, heavenly council. Why is that important? Well, in the Canaanite mythology, the head of the divine council was El, E-L. I'll pronounce it Eel, so you don't think it's the letter L. Eel. Eel was called the father of the gods. Guess how many sons he had? 70. He had 70 sons who were divine beings. So these were the 70 sons of God. And in the Canaanite mythology, these 70 sons of God influence the affairs of the world. Now, you may say, well, that's the pagans. It's not the Old Testament. Well, hold on. Are you aware that the Old Testament testifies to a heavenly council? That the Old Testament confirms the belief in a divine council, a heavenly council, in which you have supernatural beings, quote-unquote divine beings, who dwell in this council with Yahweh presiding over them? Do you know that? You want me to prove it to you? 1 Kings 22, 19 to 23. So, just because something is found among pagan cults doesn't mean it's not true. Because even the pagans discovered many truths and had many truths revealed to them, which they then perverted and embellished. And so the Bible then gives us the accurate record of these things. After all, even the pagans had a flood story, did they not? 1 Kings 22, 19 to 23. Lo and behold, here is the heavenly council. Then Micaiah said, therefore hear the word of Yahweh. I saw Yahweh sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by on his right hand and on his left. That's the heavenly council. This is what is called the divine council. Do you see it? And the host to right and left, ready to receive instructions and orders from Yahweh. You guys see this? Is there a heavenly council, a divine council according to the Old Testament? Now, does this mean the Old Testament is nothing but a repackaging of pagan myths? Absolutely not. If you believe in the Bible that there is a flood that destroyed the then known world, so that all the human beings are descendants of Noah, why would it surprise you that Noah's descendants would carry with them knowledge of the flood, knowledge of one family surviving, knowledge of a heavenly council, but then perverting these truths, embellishing them, right? Twisting them in such a way that they diverted from the true faith. All right. You want more proof of a divine council according to the Bible? Do you want more examples of the Holy Bible confirming a heavenly council? A council in which you have divine beings, angelic, spiritual beings, spirit creatures. Psalm 89, 5 to 8. Psalm 89, 5 to 8. Okay, let me give you the psalm. Write it down. Now I'm going to have to break down some words. And again, go look at your Hebrew lexicon, or look at the Hebrew Old Testament if you can read Hebrew, and you're going to confirm this. The heavens praise your wonders, right? Yahweh, O Lord, your faithfulness to an assembly of the holy ones. Get it? Assembly of the holy ones, council of holy ones. For who in the skies above can compare with the Lord, Yahweh? Who is like Yahweh, the Lord, among the heavenly beings? This is the divine council. Do you guys see it? Assembly of the holy ones, in the skies above, heaven above, heavenly beings. Now the words heavenly beings is actually the sons of Elim, sons of God. So who among the sons of God in heaven, in the assembly above, is like Yahweh? Answer, none of them is like Yahweh. But do you see this? It talks about a heavenly assembly. Do you guys see it? And the word here, Psalm 89:6, heavenly beings, don't take my word for it. It's B'nai Elim. B'nai Elim. Literally, sons of Elim, which is the plural of El. Plural of El. Okay? And El is one of the names of God. Like Elohim is the plural of Eloh. Eloh. Elim is the plural of El. So it's saying the sons of God. Sons of God. Notice they're called the sons of God. Interesting, right? Now this was the New International Version. That's the version. Notice how the King James renders Psalm 89:6. Psalm 89:6. Notice how it renders it. Sons of the mighty, taking the plural, Elim, to be a reference to the mightiness, the might of God. Is that clear? Here's how the King James Version renders Psalm 89:5. Psalm 89:5. Notice how the King James renders Psalm 89:5. And the heavens shall praise thy wonders, O Lord, thy faithfulness also in the congregation of the saints. Now the word is kadoshim. What saints? Earthly saints or heavenly saints? No, the heavenly ones. The holy ones, the saints in heaven, meaning the angels, who are called sons of Alim, B'nai Alim. Here it goes, the King James, Psalm 89:6. For unto heaven can be compared unto the Lord, who among the sons of the mighty liken unto the Lord? So is it clear, 1 Kings 22, Psalm 89, there is a heavenly assembly, a heavenly council, a congregation in heaven. And in heaven, you have Yahweh God on his throne, presiding over holy ones, sons of God, heavenly beings, spirit creatures. Okay, we got more. Daniel 7:9-10. Daniel 7:9-10. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. So he's seated now. Okay. His garment was snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. Fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Now watch this. 1,000 thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were open. This is the divine council, the heavenly council. Notice God on the throne is surrounded by multitudes of spirit beings standing in attention, ready to receive orders. This is also found in Revelation 4 and 5. Revelation chapters 4 and 5. We're not going to quote it, but it's there, right? Do you see it? I have another one. This one I have to break down. I'm going to have to break it down for you. Final example, Psalm 82:1. Psalm 82:1. I'm going to have to put this down for you guys, because in your English translations it will be different. It varies, right? The way they translate Psalm 82:1. A psalm of Asaph. God stands in the congregation of the mighty. He judges among the gods. I'm going to give you the Hebrew. This is what the Hebrew says. Elohim stands in the council, assembly, congregation of El. Elohim, he judges among the Elohim. Did you see it? Elohim, El, Elohim. So Elohim, God, stands in the congregation of El, which is also God in Hebrew. It's a singular form. This Elohim who's standing in the congregation of El, God, he's standing there to pass judgment on the Elohim, the gods. Who are the gods that this Elohim is going to judge? And where is this congregation of God located? Who is the God that's standing in judgment over gods? Who are these other gods, Elohim, and where is this congregation? Well, the God who's judging them would be Yahweh, all right? Now, are these gods, these Elohim that the Elohim will judge, are they angels or human beings? Do you know why they can't be humans? Because here, whoever these gods are in the congregation, human rulers on earth have never presided in God's congregation. The only congregation that God had on earth is Israel. These rulers of the world were not commanded to come to Israel for God to come down and judge them, right? Because this judgment is taking place in the council of God. Secondly, it can't be referring to Israelite judges. You know why it can't be referring to the rulers of Israel? Because verse 8 talks about the nations and the world. At no point in history has any Israelite ruler or Israelite judge judged and ruled the nations. Let me prove it to you. Let's read Psalm 82:8. Arise, O God, for you shall inherit nations. Notice the entire earth. At no point in Israel's history did any of the judges of Israel or the kings of Israel rule over all the nations. They only ruled over Israel. Secondly, at no point in history do you find human rulers being called by God to meet him in his congregation on earth. It's never happened, right? At no point in history do you find human rulers, the kings of the nations, being called to meet God in his congregation on earth. When does that happen and where? But Psalm 82:1 says, Elohim is entering into judgment with the gods in the congregation. In God's congregation. A psalm of Asaph. God stands in the congregation. So this is in God's congregation. He's doing this. And he's judging the gods. Now why is he judging the gods? Why is he going to judge them? Let's read. Now post verses 2 to 7. Psalm 82, verses 2 to 7. Now watch. What's his problem with these gods? How long will you judge unjustly? This is his problem with these gods. And show partiality to the wicked. They're corrupt. They're evil. They're siding with the wicked. They're helping the wicked against the righteous and the poor and the oppressed. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Free them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are unstable. I said you are gods, and all of you children. More literally, sons of the Most High. Do you see this phrase here? Sons of the Most High. That's the same phrase in Deuteronomy 32:8 in the ESV. When God divided the nations according to the sons of who? God. But in the context, the God is the Most High. Compare Psalm 82:6 with Deuteronomy 32:8 again in the ESV. Watch here. Yes. You are gods, sons of the Most High, right? Okay, now watch. You are gods, you are Elohim, sons of the Most High. Now let's compare Deuteronomy 32:8. See if you make the connection. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance. Nations. When he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. The Most High is God. The sons of God in Deuteronomy 32:8 are the sons of the Most High. Notice it says, when he divided the nations, he divided them according to the number of the sons of God. Now let's compare Psalm 82:6 to 8. Nations, sons of God, the Most High. Nations, sons of God, the Most High. Now watch, Psalm 82:6 to 8. I said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But you shall die like men. Literally, you shall die like Adam. The word here is Adam. You shall die like Adam and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. Do you see? Sons of the Most High, God, nations. Psalm 82:6 to 8, you have the words Most High, sons, God, nations, that you find in Deuteronomy 32:8. So what's the point of Psalm 82? God is angry, upset, fed up with the gods of the council for the way they're ruling the world, they're ruling the nations. These are wicked sons of God who are siding with the wicked, corrupting justice, oppressing the poor and the righteous and the fatherless. And God says, I'm fed up with you, I'm now going to destroy you. You see what Psalm 82 is about? So in Psalm 82, who are the gods, the sons of the Most High, that God is going to destroy in judgment? Who are they? Those who live in the council. What council? The heavenly one. So these are spirit beings, right? And these spirit beings are being destroyed because they've corrupted the world, corrupted the earth, corrupted the nations, sided with the evil, and oppressed the righteous. Doesn't this sound like Deuteronomy 32:8? The nations divided according to the number of the sons of God? Now you see Jesus' use of this psalm in a completely different light. And it's now becomes even more amazing, does it not? Why is God going to destroy these gods in Psalm 82? What did God entrust them with? They were entrusted to do what? To rule the nations, the world, the nations. God entrusted them to rule the nations. But guess what? They're not judging righteously. They're judging wickedly, unrighteously, partially towards the wicked and helping the wicked to prevail and oppressing the poor, the righteous, the helpless. But what in the world are these gods doing ruling the nations? It takes us back to Deuteronomy 32:8. Now let's go back to Deuteronomy 32:8 to 9 now. They don't have to be from heaven. They can come down to the earth and possess human rulers and manipulate them and guide them to do what they want. And work through human agencies, human governments, rulers. I'll show you that. We're going to get there. Show you that. Now read. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the numbered sons of God. Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob is his allotted heritage. This is what it's saying. God gave all the nations to the sons of God, but he kept Israel for himself. He told the sons of God, here, the nations are yours, but Israel's mine. Don't touch it. The Most High, God, Yahweh said, you sons of God, the nations are yours. Here you go. Israel is mine. Don't you touch it and come near it. Now you understand why the nations thought that when they defeated a nation, they defeated their God. See, even the pagans knew each territory had a God ruling over it. So if you defeated that territory, you didn't just defeat the people, but the God was defeated. Get it? See why God was angry at Israel? Raised up nations to punish Israel? Guess what the nations thought? The nations thought that meant that the gods of the nations defeated the God of Israel. And it got God angry. And he kept telling Israel, you're shaming me in front of the people. I have to punish you, and I'm going to use these nations to punish you. But in so doing, in their pride and sin and arrogance, they're going to think that their gods are actually defeating me, which is why they're defeating you. That's exactly what the king of Assyria said to Hezekiah. If you read Isaiah 36 and 37, the Rabshakeh comes up to the men of Hezekiah and says, hey, don't let Hezekiah deceive you, saying that God is going to deliver you. Which of the gods of the nations were able to save them from the hand of our master? In other words, not even your God will be able to save you, because the gods of the other nations couldn't do it. You understand? That's why the Lord was upset. You are profaning my name among the nations. You are shaming me. Because every time I have to punish you, every time the Moabites, the Ammonites, right? The Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, you name it, every time they defeat you, they think their gods are defeating me. So they think I'm no better, no stronger than their gods. This is what you're doing to me. Now this gives you a whole new perspective and a better understanding of the Old Testament, right? So when the nations speak of gods, those gods are not non-existent beings. They're actual beings that do exist, but have deceived the people into looking to them as gods instead of the true God. In other words, Baal is a being. He's a demonic evil being, right? Whose worshippers think that he is the God worthy of worship and not Yahweh. You get it? The idols were nothing, but according to Paul, behind every idol there's a demon. 1 Corinthians 10:20. So the nations are actually worshiping beings. Yep, Allah of Islam is another being. But they are evil beings, demonic beings, who are influencing people to worship them instead of worshiping God. No, I imply that what pagans sacrifice, they offer to demons and not to God. I want you to be ignorant of this, brethren. You catch it? Pagans, when they worship their gods, worship their statues, the images representing their gods, are worshiping demons. So those beings that the statues represent are real. Catch it? The idol is nothing, and the demons are nothing. They're powerless, but they're real. They're real beings that they're worshiping. Baal is real. Nebo is real, but they're all wicked, evil, unclean spirits. That's the message of the Bible. Now here's the question, though. Here's the real question. Why in the world would God hand the nations over to these wicked, evil beings? Doesn't God love his creatures and love the nations and want them to be saved? Yes. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 32:8 one more time for the answer. The answer is right there in Deuteronomy 32 verse 8. One more time. When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, the sons of Adam, literally it's the sons of Adam. My question, can I ask you, why did God divide the nations and when? Why did he divide them and when? Why did he divide them and when? It's in the Bible. It's in Genesis chapters 10 and 11. The table of nations, their divisions, number 70, and then Genesis 11 tells us why. 70. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, there was a belief that the divine council had 70 sons of El, the 70 sons of God. You got it, Babel. He divided them because of their sin at Babel. When God told them to multiply and spread out to the entire earth, mankind said, no, we're going nowhere, we're staying here, in defiance of God's order. So God brought judgment by dividing the languages, forcing them to separate into different groups. He divided them in judgment. Part of their judgment wasn't just the division of the languages, but also handing them over to evil spirit rulers to oppress them. That's the judgment. You get it now? Now it makes sense when Paul tells you in Ephesians 6:12, our battle is not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities and dominions and authorities in the heavenly realm. Now does it make sense? So when you go into a territory, you're battling the gods of that territory. The Bible is supernatural, truly from God, divine in origin. Only a blind man cannot see that, St. Augustine. Right? You understand what the message of the Bible is? We are reclaiming the nations for King Jesus. The nations that have been handed over to these gods for judgment, when they turn to Christ, they are freed from the tyranny of these gods and reclaimed for the Lord Jesus. That's why Jesus says, go and make disciples of all nations. I have come. I am the God who is now passing judgment on the gods and telling them, go to hell, the nations are mine. Go claim the nations for me. You get it now? Now it puts the Great Commission in a whole new light that's mind-boggling. And this is real, folks. Demons are real. Ask any occultist, witch, or Satanist. They're more real than you can imagine. They're behind the scenes, influencing governments, rulers, right, to oppose us and stop us because they fear our message, because they know that if a people turn to the gospel, their power over that people has been destroyed, they're set freed. Now, to really prove to you that the sons of God are evil spirits, Daniel 10, 12 to 13. Amazing stuff, huh? And how much we take for granted the Holy Bible. How amazing this book is. All right, now, Daniel 10, 12 to 13. Watch this. Then he said to me, fear not, Daniel. This is the angel, by the way. It took him 21 days to reach Daniel with an answer to his prayer. So for 21 days, if you read the entire chapter, to receive an answer. And fasting. From the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I've come because of your words. Now, notice what he just told Daniel. The first day you prayed and fasted, God answered you. Then why did it take me 21 days to reach you with the answer? The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. What? The reason why it took me 21 days to come to you with an answer, the prince of the king of Persia detained me, would not let me come to you. The one ruling Persia, where you're dwelling at, stopped me from reaching you for 21 days. So Michael, one of the chief princes, had to come, fight him off for me, so that he could give me opportunity to enter the realm and speak to you directly. Did you catch it? And then it says he was left there with the kings of Persia. Kings of Persia. Who is this prince of the kingdom of Persia that was able to see a spirit being enter into his realm and then fight him off for 21 days? No human being has that capacity. So who is this prince of the kingdom of Persia that was able to see a spirit being that's invisible to the naked eye, unless God opens your eyes, and had the power to resist him for 21 days. That spirit being, he is the one ruling Persia, not the human king. So who's the real? Not the human king. He's a puppet in the hands of the spirit ruler. Catch it? All right. So what in the world is a spirit being doing ruling Persia? Well, now let's look at Daniel 10:21. Okay, Daniel 10:21. Notice the angel speaking to Daniel, Michael, everyone else. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. I'm going to tell you what God has written in his book. There is none who stands by my side, none who helps me against these except Michael, your prince. Michael, your prince, right? Well, only different in the sense that Christ says, now disarm them. So when we preach the gospel, that's our weapon to reclaim the nations for Christ. Now those statements about Christ disarming principalities make sense right now, right, Blind? Now watch here, Daniel 10:20-21. Watch here. Then he said, you know why I've come to you? But now I'll return to fight. The angel is going to return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. Did you catch it? When he fights the prince of Persia, then the prince of Greece will come. So notice who's the next one and who's going to take power. When the prince of Persia is defeated, the prince of Greece will come and take his place and become the world power. What's going on here, guys? Who's the prince of Persia that he's going to fight? The human prince? And who's the prince of Greece? It's not talking about Alexander of Macedonia. It's talking about the evil spirit that possessed Alexander and used him and his armies to wreak havoc upon the world. You catch it? Okay. Could it be clearer then that because of mankind's rebellion against God at the Tower of Babel, part of the punishment that fell upon the nations, God handed them over to the tyranny and oppression of wicked, evil spirit rulers. And their oppression is only destroyed, their bondage is only destroyed, they're only set free when they turn to Christ. You get it? Now Colossians 14 and 15 makes sense. Watch here. Colossians 2, 14 and 15. And it makes sense when Paul says in Ephesians 6:12, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but rulers, powers, principalities, authorities in the heavenly realm. Now notice what Colossians 2, 14, 15 says that Christ did. He canceled us with its legal demands, right? Our sin debt, he canceled it. So there'll be no more judgment on us. This he set aside, nailing it to the cross. Now watch this. He disarmed the rulers, authorities, and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him. Wow. Now it makes sense? What rulers and authorities that he disarmed? Colossians 1:16 tells you. The ones of, and not just the ones on earth. Colossians 1:16. So how did the Lord Jesus defeat them, disarm them, dispossess them? By his cross. Colossians 1:16. Who are these rulers, authorities? Colossians 1:16. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. So it's talking about all the rulers and authorities in heaven and earth. Christ created them all. So who did he disarm? Not just human authorities, but spiritual authorities operating through human authorities. He disarmed them all by his cross. So let's end it with these two verses. Now notice what Isaiah 24:21 says. Now this is being to light. Now it makes sense. Oh wow. The cross of Christ wasn't just the means of human redemption. The cross of Christ was the means of destroying the evil rulers and dispossessing them of the nations that they've been terrorizing and oppressing. Isaiah 24:21. Watch here. Notice the connection with heaven and earth. Isaiah 24:21. Notice the connection. On that day, guys, pay attention. Michael, everyone read this. On that day, the Lord will punish the host of heaven in heaven and the kings of the earth. Do you see the connection? To destroy the kings of the earth, you have to destroy the rulers in heaven who are possessing them, guiding them, pressing them, and using them as human pawns, human puppets. Do you see the connection? Yahweh will punish the host of heaven in heaven and the kings of the earth on the earth. Do you see the connection now? It's a cosmic battle. You've been asleep, folks. You think it's only about us on earth. No, it's about the entire universe. It's a cosmic battle of cosmic epic proportions. Now let's go to Jesus. Matthew 24, 29 and 31. But now let's go to Matthew 24, 29 and 31. Watch what our Lord Jesus says. Now I want to see if you make the connection with Isaiah 24:21 and the rulers, the gods who rule the nations. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Is he talking about actual stars, or is he talking about spirit creatures? That stars here means spirit beings that will fall from heaven. The powers of the heavens will be shaken. That stars can refer to angels. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send out angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Do you make the connection here? For God to destroy all evil rulers on earth, he first destroys the spirit rulers possessing and using and influencing them. To destroy one, you have to destroy the other. Do you catch it? You have to disarm heaven in order to destroy and disarm the earth. That stars can refer to angels, Revelation 1:20. So don't look for meteorites crashing to the earth. That's misreading the text. Because don't forget, in the Old Testament, the sun and the moon were taken to be gods, symbols of God. So when he talks about punishing the sun and the moon, he's talking about punishing the gods that the nations worship. Proof of it? Didn't the Egyptians worship the sun god, Ra? And why did God bring pitch darkness upon the land? As judgment against Ra, the sun god. Right? Revelation 1:20. As for the mystery of the seven stars that you saw in my right hand, the seven golden lampstands, the seven stars are the angels. Did you catch it? So a star can refer to a messenger, either a heavenly messenger or an earthly one. It doesn't refer to the star in the sky. So when it talks about the sun being darkened and the moon losing its light and the stars falling from heaven, he's talking about the very objects that the nations look to as gods and worship. He's basically saying, I'm going to punish all the gods that the nations worship, all the gods that have taken the nations captive, and all the human rulers being used by these gods. I'm going to punish them all and bring an end to them all. That's what he's saying. You know what's ironic, by the way? You want me to make a connection to Islam? I've written articles on this, and I've documented this assertion from the Muslim sources. According to the Muslim sources, the pagan Arabs in Mecca worshipped the sun and the moon and five other planets as gods. And the moon was the male deity and the chief of the gods, and the sun was his consort. This is where we get the notion that Allah was the name used by the pagan Arabs for the moon god. So even the Arabs of Muhammad's time worshipped the constellation, the moon, the sun, and the five planets, because they thought there were only seven altogether. This is why the pagans ran around the Kaaba 7 times. They ran around it once for each of the planets that they viewed as gods. This is why the pagans ran between the hills Safa and Marwa 7 times. all of which Muslims continue to do to this day because of Muhammad's deception. So we have in Islam is the ancient worship of the constellations being repackaged as the message of the God of Abraham. Do you know that? The astral worship of the pagans being repackaged by Muhammad, an antichrist, agent of Satan, in order to supplant the message of the true God, misleading people into thinking that this is the God of Abraham. I'm not saying that Muslims worship the moon god, because I know people are going to twist my words. The Quran says worship the moon god. What I'm saying is the religion of the pagans of Arabia, especially in Mecca, was a religion based on the worship of the constellations, the sun and the moon and the 5 planets, something that even the Islamic sources confirm. They also confirmed that the moon was considered the male deity. And in the patriarchal society, the male deity is the chief. So the moon was the chief god. The sun was his consort. It was the female god, the goddess. And the 5 planets, their offspring. So what you have in Islam is a repackaging of this ancient astral worship influenced by the gods in opposition to the true God, whose aim it was to mislead the nations away from the true God. That religion is repackaged in Islam as the religion of the God of Abraham. You see what's happening here?